In the winter of 1983, a woman named Marva Tillis stood in a kitchen in Gary, Indiana, counting out exactly what was left before the next check came. A half pack of bologna, 1 can of pork and beans, a bag of rice, and 5 children who didn't know any of that yet. She didn't tell them. She never told them. What she did was open the cabinet, start the stove, and turn whatever was left into something that hit the table looking like she'd planned it that way all along. The same way she did it every single week, whether the check was early, late, or short. This is what I do. I go looking for the meals that never made it into anybody's cookbook, because a mother who's stretching her last few dollars isn't writing recipes down. She's just getting through Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then the check finally comes. Before we're through, you'll hear about a sandwich with no meat on it at all, a steak that never came anywhere near a cow, and a dish so plain it barely counts as cooking, and yet it fed more families, more nights than almost anything else on this list. My name is Uncle Elijah, and this is 10 struggle meals Black mothers leaned on to feed the whole family, starting with the one nearly everyone remembers but almost nobody talks about. Number 10. Fried bologna sandwiches. A slice of bologna, cut with a small X through the center so it wouldn't curl up like a bowl in the hot skillet, fried until the edges turned dark and slightly crisp, then dropped straight onto a slice of white bread with mustard or a little mayonnaise. It cost pennies a slice, cooked in under 2 minutes, and needed nothing more than a working stove to make. For families stretching a grocery budget across 2 full weeks, a single pack of bologna could cover several lunches or a quick weeknight dinner when there simply wasn't time or money for anything more involved. Kids who grew up on it still know that exact sizzle, still know the smell of bologna hitting a hot, greased pan the second they walk into a kitchen making it today. Some households took it a step further, melting a slice of cheese over the top right before it came off the heat, turning a 2-minute lunch into something that felt like an actual meal. Number 9. Beanie Weenies. A can of pork and beans, dumped straight into a pot with a few sliced hot dogs, warmed through and served over rice or alongside a slice of white bread. This dish belonged almost entirely to the end of the month, when the refrigerator had gone mostly empty, and the pantry was down to whatever canned goods hadn't been touched yet. It asked for no skill and barely any time. A single pot, 10 minutes on the stove, and dinner was on the table for 4 or 5 kids without a single trip to the store. Some mothers dressed it up with a little brown sugar or ketchup stirred in, a small touch that turned a can of beans and a package of hot dogs into something the kids actually looked forward to. It was one of the few dishes that could go from pantry shelf to table in the time it took to set out plates, which mattered on the nights when there wasn't much time to spare before homework and bath and bed. Number 8. Grease bread. Bacon grease, saved in a coffee can by the stove the way it was in kitchens across the country for generations, spread warm and thick across a slice of bread and sprinkled with salt. There was no bacon on it at all, just the fat, carrying every bit of that smoky, salty flavor the bacon left behind. It cost nothing beyond what had already been spent and used, which made it a genuine last resort on the mornings when there wasn't a single other thing in the kitchen to offer a hungry child before school. Mothers who made it rarely called attention to it. It simply appeared on a plate, and it simply got eaten, no questions asked. Now, it's worth pausing here to say something plainly. What's on this list wasn't unique to any one decade. The specific dishes changed as canned goods became more common and city kitchens replaced wood stoves. But the underlying math never really went away. A fixed, limited amount of money had to stretch across an unpredictable number of days, and a mother was the one expected to make that math work every single time, without complaint and often without help. That pressure sat behind every dish on this list, whether it came out of a Depression-era pantry in the rural South or a cramped apartment kitchen in a northern city 40 years later. What changed was the size of the grocery store and what sat on its shelves. What never changed was a mother doing the arithmetic in her head before she ever opened the refrigerator door. Keep that in mind as we keep going, because it explains why so many of these dishes look nothing alike and yet feel exactly the same. Number 7. Grits and eggs. A pot of plain grits, stirred with butter and a little salt, served alongside scrambled eggs, sometimes with the eggs stirred directly into the grits to stretch a single carton across a much bigger breakfast than it could manage on its own. Grits were cheap, filling, and kept in the pantry for months without spoiling, which made this combination a dependable go-to whenever the grocery money was running thin toward the end of a pay period. A single egg, cracked into a big pot of grits and scrambled right in, could genuinely feed several children a warm breakfast for less than the cost of cereal, and it did the job of holding a kid over until lunch without a single complaint at the table. On the mornings when there was a little extra, a spoon of government cheese or a splash of hot sauce turned the exact same pot into something that felt like a treat instead of a necessity. Number 6. Fried potatoes and onions. Potatoes, sliced thin, fried low and slow in a skillet with a sliced onion until both turned soft, golden, and slightly caramelized at the edges. Potatoes were one of the few ingredients a tight-budget kitchen could almost always count on having on hand, cheap by the bag, and capable of stretching across several meals without going bad. Served alongside eggs for breakfast, or on their own with a slice of bread for dinner, fried potatoes and onions turned two of the most basic ingredients in the entire kitchen into a dish that actually satisfied a hungry table, no meat required at all. Number 5. Poor man's steak. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs and a little milk, pressed flat and thin like an actual steak, chilled until firm, then floured and pan-fried before being smothered in a rich onion gravy and simmered until tender. A single pound of ground beef, stretched with breadcrumbs and rolled thin, could genuinely feed a family of 6 or more, made to look and feel like a real steak dinner, even though the actual amount of meat per plate was small. Poor man's steak let a mother put something on the table that felt substantial and celebratory on a night when the budget genuinely couldn't support anything close to the real thing. Some families even chilled the patties overnight on purpose, insisting the meat held together better and fried up firmer once it had a full day to set in the refrigerator. Number 4. Pig feet. Pickled or slow simmered until the meat turned soft and gelatinous. Pig feet were, like so much on this list, a cut nobody with money wanted, which made them cheap and consistently available at almost any butcher counter. Cooked low and slow for hours with vinegar, onion, and a heavy hand of black pepper, they became tender enough to eat straight off the bone, served hot with rice or cooled and jarred for later. It wasn't a dish every household made, and it wasn't every child's favorite either. But for the families who leaned on it, pig feet represented real, dependable protein at a price almost nothing else on the meat counter could match. Number 3. Chicken necks and gizzards. The parts of the bird sold for far less than a breast or a thigh, simmered until tender or fried crisp after a slow braise, seasoned heavy and served over rice. A pack of necks and gizzards cost a fraction of a pack of chicken breasts and stretched, with rice and gravy, into a meal that could genuinely feed an entire family. Some households came to prefer the deep, rich flavor of the gizzard over any other cut of the bird entirely, turning what started as a budget necessity into a dish some family members specifically requested, long after money stopped being quite so tight. Gizzards in particular took real patience. Cooked too quickly, they turned tough as leather, and only a slow simmer or a careful fry ever got them right. Number 2. Tuna and noodles. A can of tuna, a box of egg noodles, and whatever was left in the pantry. A can of cream soup if there was one, or just butter and a splash of milk, stirred together into a simple, warm casserole that could be on the table in under 30 minutes. Canned tuna held for months without refrigeration, which made it a reliable pantry staple a family could fall back on any night of the week, planned or not. It wasn't a dish anyone requested for a birthday, but it filled a plate. It used almost nothing. And it meant a mother didn't have to make an emergency trip to the store on a night when there simply wasn't time or money for one. And number 1, not a recipe at all. Really, barely even a dish by most people's definition. Butter rice. Pot of plain white rice. Cooked simple. Finished with a spoon of butter and a heavy crack of black pepper. Sometimes with a little salt and nothing else. On the very worst nights, no meat, no vegetables, nothing left in the freezer. This is what got made, because rice was cheap by the bag and it always filled a stomach. Some kids ate it plain and never once complained, because a warm bowl of anything, served by a mother who clearly wasn't going to let them go to bed hungry, was enough. I put it at number 1 not because it was the most memorable dish these families made, but because it was the meal every single family on this list eventually fell back on, at least once, when absolutely everything else had run out. The plainest dish here, and somehow the one that says the most. So tell me, which of these did your mother actually make? And which one do you still find yourself making now, even though you don't have to? I read every comment, and half of what ends up in this journal comes straight from families who lived every single one of these meals. Because every dish on this list says the same true thing. A mother stretching her very last dollar wasn't failing her family. She was proving, meal after meal, exactly how far love can stretch when it has to. If any of these dishes are still showing up on your table today, that's not nostalgia. That's a mother's arithmetic still quietly holding a family together. One plain, ordinary meal at a time.